Hello, we're just waiting for participants to load in. Oh my goodness. Keep going up. Okay. Hi. Hello everyone. My name is Tom. I am a college counselor at CollegeWise. We're going to get into the intros in just a few minutes, but thank you all for joining us as we let the attendees come in, and we will also Caitlin and I both recognize that you're probably paying about as much attention to this as we do when we attend webinars in the evening, and you're also cooking dinner and having a family and going about life. So we'll try to keep some of the most salient pieces prominent, I guess, so that if it's just if it's just background noise, number one, thank you for listening to me, as I appreciate the being the ambient noise in your household, and then also Caitlin. So my name is Tom Barry. I'm one of the counselors at CollegeWise, and we're excited today to talk about just a playbook. Maybe sounds a little bit too prescriptive, but ways that a lot of times teenagers who are going through the college admission process, and parents as they are trying to help their students navigate the college admission process. There are a lot of right ways to do it. As we always say at CollegeWise, there are a lot of routes to get to a good destination, and there's no right or wrong way. And so we just want to make sure that we're avoiding, frequently there's like one wrong way. And so that wrong way is kind of just if your student feels like you don't love them, or like are feeling very judgy. And so we're going to help you navigate that as well. So just a quick reference about CollegeWise. Caitlin and I will talk a bit about both of us individually. But Caitlin, if we can go, thank you. CollegeWise as an organization, I've been here for 10 years. We've had more counselors every year, which has been really, really amazing. Our philosophy is essentially rooted in the fact that every student is a person, and there is not one right solution for every student. There are actually typically multiple right answers for most students and most families, and that's how we try to approach our counseling philosophy. So we work with students on every piece of the college admission process, from course selection is common this time of year to standardized testing, if that's something that is right for your family, while figuring out if that's right or wrong for your family, and working together on standardized testing if that's something that you need to do or want to do, and then from a broader perspective, just getting to know your kids as they go through this thing, because you'll hear me and Caitlin talking about it, like the college admission timeline process. While it's individual for each person and each family, it's a huge thing for students, and we never want to minimize like how big of a developmental step this is for them to be taking. And that doesn't mean that, well, that doesn't mean that means you don't do it all at once. You try to take staggered steps, so that you and your student can feel confident in each one of those steps, feel like it's thought through, and that you're making a decision as a family. Because college admission, while it is only one person going to college and university, it is frequently a family decision. And so just trying to recognize that this is not a single human being. This is an ecosystem of people who love and want to support your student and your family. So here's some numbers for you. And then, Caitlin, if we can go to the next step, just because we saw the question that was there. Yes, this is being recorded. No, you don't need to raise your hand to ask questions. Yes, there will be Q&A at the end. So you can do the Q&A either in the Q&A function, or you can just put it straight into the chat, and Nama will be joining us shortly, and she will be able to help facilitate that Q&A at the end. Like most people who used to work in college admission, Caitlin and I can talk for way too long about college admission, and we will try not to do that. And we're not trying to proselytize or anything. We'll try to keep it to a nice round, like 30, 40 minutes, so that there is plenty of time for that Q&A. So then next slide, I think, is about us, right, Caitlin? Yay, there we go.
Yes.
So I'll go first because then you're gonna dive in. Okay. So like I say, my name is Tom Barry. I'm one of the counselors at CollegeWise. I've been here for 10 years. I'm based in Seattle. A lot of my students are from Seattle. A lot of my students are also from California because that's where I lived before living here. And so those are sort of like my two main jurisdictions, even though I didn't grow up in either one of them. Prior to joining CollegeWise, I was a college admission reader at Colorado College, which is a small liberal arts school in Colorado. That was immediately after I graduated from Colorado College, and I did both California and international when I worked there. Then I went to Stanford University and got my master's in international education policy. I thought I was going to want to work and live in an international school at the time, which I did at the time. And then I worked at African Leadership Academy in Johannesburg, South Africa for 2 years. And now, but that was 2 years. I was a little bit sick of going from the west coast of the United States to South Africa every 6 weeks, and so since then I have been working with CollegeWise for the last 10 years at CollegeWise Northwest, which is in Seattle, Bellevue. Depends on they're all the same. So that's me. That's my background and where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Tom, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name is Caitlin Harper. I am a CollegeWise counselor based out of Portland, Oregon. So the southern better sister to where Tom currently lives. I grew up in Kansas, and my own college search took me as far away from Kansas as I could possibly get. And that was what I was looking for. It is how I ended up here in Portland. And I had an amazing college experience at a small liberal arts school. And then a completely opposite experience to high school, where I was getting ready to graduate from college, thinking, how do I stay here forever? That is how I got my start in college admissions. My first job out of graduation was working for my alma mater, and I stayed working in the admissions office for a decade. I did what felt like everything you could possibly do in college admissions. Worked my way up to senior leadership, and eventually realized that as a director of admission, you spend more time with spreadsheets than you do with actual students, and it wasn't fulfilling to me anymore. So I joined the CollegeWise team, and now I get to spend every day talking to students, and it's awesome. Very similar to what Tom was sharing earlier about the CollegeWise approach. I love that I get to show up and get to know each student individually and help them forge their path through this process in the way that suits them best. It's something new every day, and that is always really exciting to me. So we are going to jump into the content for today's webinar. And I'm going to start by actually telling you what I tell all of my students in my first meeting with them, my very first meeting with them. I say, listen, I am a very chill counselor. Usually they don't believe me, but still. I say I'm here to support you and empower you, and ideally alleviate some of the stress that you are bound to feel through this process of college admissions. But in order for me to do that, I need you to do two things for me. The first is communicate. That's not a surprise to any of us, really. But the second rule that I have for my students is the one where I think that you may find perspective in approaching how your role may impact your students' process and how you're able to help them through this journey without completely hijacking it. So my second rule is that I can't care more than you. And I care a lot. I care a lot about my student success, as I know that you do as well, but they are the one going to college. And like I told you earlier in my introduction, I do this work because I want to relive my college days, and this is as close as I can get. But ultimately, your student being the one taking ownership of this process is most importantly going to teach them those valuable lessons and skills that they need to be successful in college and beyond, right? So it's all connected. And as parents, I know you are acutely aware of that. So Tom and I are going to share some hopefully very specific pieces of advice to help you as you navigate this process with your student, and how to play a supportive role on their team, but ultimately make them feel like the MVP. Handle your team's travel arrangements. This is a very tangible place to start, which is why I think it's number one on the list in talking about how to, handle your child's college application process as a parent. It doesn't matter how old your student is or where they are in the college admissions process. Exposure is incredibly powerful, and seeing different kinds of colleges, universities, campuses is one of the best things that you can be doing as a family. So the tangible piece of advice is to make it a goal to try and see as many schools, whether it's part of family travel or close local to you, as possible. And don't just default to the schools that you know well. So I know spring breaks are happening. Maybe you have a spring break trip to San Diego coming up as a family. Go ahead and visit UC San Diego, but also maybe visit University of San Diego and have the comparison and contrast of a big school and a smaller school, a public and a private, a non-secular and a religiously affiliated. You have a lot of opportunities wherever you are to find schools that are very opposite and do that comparing. Maybe you're doing an East Coast summer trip to see family. Spend a day going to, taking a train from Boston to Maine and go visit Colby or Bates, or visit Sarah Lawrence or Eugene Lang in New York. And you're going to get a wonderful introduction to liberal arts education and a lot of different styles of curriculum that can spark conversations about the kind of learning your student may want to do in college. Even if you're not traveling, have you done an official visit at the college or university that's closest to home? Don't discount the easy option. This is a really good idea, particularly for students that may be younger, 9th or 10th grade, just as that introductory college visit. This is to get them thinking, and there can be so much to learn from the option that's closest to home. The goal of campus visits isn't always to decide where is your student going to apply or where are they going to eventually enroll. And there may be parents in the crowd right now that have seniors who are determining where they're going to go to college next year, and campus visits are great for that. But sometimes campus visits are there to help the team build a common vocabulary and allow your student to start being able to articulate likes and dislikes. And as a parent, as their college counselor, as part of this team, you will thank me in the long run when down the road, Jimmy is trying to tell you, what schools he likes, and the only thing he can share is that the school is a vibe. I don't know what that means. So getting that vocabulary built up can really help with the conversations around fit and match and what the students' priorities and preferences are. Last thing I'll say about scheduling visits is that this is an area where you absolutely can and probably will need to be very involved. Handle the logistics and the itinerary and the navigation. That's something that your student will likely need your support doing. You can be very involved. But when it comes to the visit itself, I definitely encourage you to try and take a step back. Allow your student to explore and interact with the visit and the campus in their own way. If they want to branch out, go see the library on their own, let them do that. go grab a cup of coffee instead. And when you get in the car at the end of that visit, it's one of my biggest pieces of advice for students and families who are tackling college visits. Don't immediately start peppering your student with questions at the end of the visit when you get in the car. Give them 10 minutes to breathe and process. And I wouldn't be surprised if they start sharing their impressions of the campus with you without being provoked. Next role that you can play on the team is coach, or at least assistant coach. And the very best coaches know the game. We hear from parents a lot as they are seeking out college-wise counseling services that one of the reasons they do so is that they just don't know what they don't know. And they're really worried about missing something or not being able to answer their students' questions or support them in the way that they need. Lucky for you, you are going to have a lot of opportunities to learn about college admissions. Your student school will likely host events that are geared towards you as a member of the support team. There will be websites and newsletters and packets of information. Attending these events and engaging with all of the resources is one way that you can be involved without taking over the process from your student. And don't worry, you don't need to be the expert. You don't need to be the head coach. I actually really appreciate when my parents email me with their worries or their questions. I mean, they're worried about their students' upcoming SAT, or they are thinking, is it really necessary for their student to be taking 5 APs because they're staying up until 1 a.m. with homework every night and they're worried. Those worries directed towards me, my parents reaching out and asking those questions to gain that perspective, ultimately allows them to show up for their student with positivity, with empowerment, and it allows all of us to exist as this team in support of the student being the MVP. So give them a chance and do your due diligence in taking the opportunities to learn about college admissions when they're presented to you, whether they're through school or some other outlet like you're doing today. So, already being that awesome assistant coach and taking the opportunity to join today's webinar in support of your MVP student. In transition to the next topic and passing the baton to Tom, and at the risk of really just carrying this team metaphor too far, I was 5'10" at the age of 13 and an absolutely terrible volleyball player. But I loved the sport and I loved being on the team. I loved it so much that showing up to practice was where I wanted to be, and I was always happy to be there. I was always incredibly enthusiastic to receive coaching and pointers from my coaches and my peers on how to get better. And I was the loudest person on the bench, regardless of outcome, win or lose, right? I spent a lot of time on that bench and they knew I was there always. At the end of my senior year of high school, after riding the bench for 4 years, my coach gave me one of the best compliments of my life that I still hold on to today. And that is that my attitude and my energy, even on the bench, made the team better. And your student is going to reflect how you feel and treat this college admissions process. So lead by example. Be the person on the bench that has their back. Be curious, not just about the college admissions process, but about your student in particular as well. One of the reasons I love this work and I do this work is that it is deeply reflective. You have a beautiful opportunity to get to know your student in a new way and for them to get to know themselves in a new way as well. And self-reflection is hard, particularly for our friends with underdeveloped frontal lobes. Um, but keep at it and ask the questions and dig deeper into those things that matter to them and why. Even if they don't respond, even if it feels like you're not getting anywhere, if you keep their priorities and their needs in the center of the conversation, I guarantee you it's going to help them in the long run. And then be excited. Yes, you are bound to run into stress and frustration and maybe disappointment through this process, but on the same or on a different side of the same coin, you have excitement, you have anticipation, and you have joy through this process. And it is your choice to show up with those emotions and let your student feed off of those, making the whole team feel better about the experience in the end. I'm going to pass it over to Tom now to give you more insight into how to be that positive and celebratory teammate.
Thank you, Caitlin. And in the interest of sportsmanship and being a good teammate, I just want to reassure you, and Caitlin can tell you because we had our college-wise retreat this summer where there was a volleyball game happening. I am also 5'10" and terrible at volleyball. So we are in the exact same boat on that.
Not a requirement of all college-wise counselors, however, but we got shown up in a lot of ways.
Yep, that was but it was super fun. It was really fun. I also didn't cheer anyone on. I was too busy I was preoccupied with my own shortcomings. But that's not the point. So yeah, so in keeping with also what Caitlin was saying and somewhat with the, the teamwork metaphor, I think in terms of for framing how to think about your role as a parent, and I say that as a parent myself, not of high school students, thankfully. But I do have a 7 and a 2.5-year-old, so I'm at a different phase. But one of the things that I do think is important, and this is something that I learned with our now 7-year-old, but back when he was like 4, is sometimes really emotionally charged experiences cause people to regress. That's just a psychological thing that we do, and you regress to like a lower phase. And so for things that were really challenging and emotionally fraught, sometimes it honestly made more sense to treat him like a toddler than like a 5-year-old. And it doesn't make any sense because intellectually and psychologically they're talking to you as if they are, and now I'm moving over to the high school age students, like intellectually and psychologically they are talking to you as if they are 18 and applying to college. But the act of applying to college is a very reflective thing that frequently causes everybody, like this is not a unique thing, to regress a little bit. And so one of the recommendations, not or pieces of advice that I give to parents sometimes is you can never go wrong by overdoing it and treating them like a toddler, even your 16-year-old or 17-year-old or 18-year-old, and treating them like a toddler. And what do you do when you have a toddler, right? Like you go to the soccer game, you're not there to win, you're there to cheer, you're there to be excited, you're there to help them enjoy what they're doing. And hopefully by virtue of being that support mechanism as one of the most important people in their life, you are making this fun almost by proxy. Like whether it's fun for you or not, you're the one who's kind of like motivating by example, as Caitlin said. And a big part of that for students applying to college is that the results, this is not so as a parent, the result is the wrong word actually. But the responses that you get from a university are not a referendum on your child's self-worth, and they are not a referendum on you as a parent. They are choices that somebody made in a dark room today. Like that they're not going to change. Don't bother trying to change them. But it's not strategic once the results come in. And so trying to think about the process that gets to the application as something that you and your student can be proud of, no matter what those responses are, is a really powerful thing. And so one of the biggest things that we talk to students about is it's not about, when it comes to, I'm just going to use the team example. It's not that you have to be the captain. It's not that you have to be the MVP. It's not that you have to be all state. It's not that you have to be the most important. You don't have to be Caitlin Clark, right? Like you can be who's playing in 30 minutes, by the way. So you don't have to be Caitlin Clark, but what's important is what Caitlin, what Caitlin Harper was saying, is the impact that you make on those around you. Because realistically speaking, if you are Caitlin Clark, you're already going to have a scholarship and you're already going to college. It doesn't matter. So, but for everyone else in the world, colleges are communities and they're looking for people who will impact their community. And that impact is not made by the accolades that you get at the very end. They're made by the efforts that you make in order to get there. And so when we're working with students, we want to make sure to focus on, and hopefully from a parental perspective, you can also reinforce this and focus on not just this essay is good or this essay is not good, because inherent in saying that this essay is good means that another essay is not good. So, so being able to say, I'm seeing progress in this essay. I'm seeing that you're being even more thoughtful. You're pulling up really good concrete examples that you can work from, and being able to use those pieces tends to be a way that both the student and the parent, this time of year, if you have a junior, I'm just going to pretend you have a junior. If you have a junior in high school, this time of year, they're hearing back, and it's hard not to feel judged, and it's hard as a parent, I'm certain, not to feel like this is the end all be all of whether or not I was a good parent. And it's really hard to extrapolate from that. But being able to think of this as we use this word over and over and over again, but being able to think of this as a process and a development that each student is learning while applying. They are learning not just how to craft applications and their writing and how to present themselves in an interview or whatever, but they are learning throughout the school year. And students you can't avoid it. They are comparing themselves to their peers and to the other people that they go to school with. And it's easy to say everything is all hunky-dory when everything is all hunky-dory. I've never worked with a single student who got into every single college they applied to, because they're not supposed to. That's not how this works. Colleges are not looking for one thing. They're not looking for a homogenous student body. Each individual college is looking for a collection of people. So we always used to use the phrase at Colorado College, we're not looking for, we're looking to build a class. We're not looking for each person to do everything. We're not looking for a bassoon player who also is a soccer goalie, who is also, on the dance team and fills every bucket that we need. We need this whole group of people to fill those buckets. And ideally, by putting forth the effort from a student perspective, you're showing that they are showing from a college perspective that they are thoughtful, careful, and from a parental perspective, you are reinforcing that if you're able to focus on the incremental progress and not just say, well, now we got everything submitted in November and now we'll wait until April to find out if you are successful or not. So just being able to say, to separate the end responses from the process that it takes to get there, and reinforcing those processorial, that's a word, processorial pieces along the way. And to that same token, just maintaining a positive attitude. This is something that can be really challenging when we're all under stress. And what I can just assure you is that as a parent, whatever stress you're feeling, your student is feeling at least 3 times more of it. and your projection of that stress does not help, does not add, so there's a certain point where as the parents, we need to be the ones who moderate our own. It's okay to feel stressed. Like that's totally normal and understandable. And Caitlin and I both, every fall, we have parents who are, as she said, I want you to come to me. I don't want you to go to your student and talk to them about the stress. Like, let me help you process this. This is not a job for a 17-year-old. This is a job for a counselor to actually help you walk through. And that's something that we do regularly every single year. But thinking about what that means in terms of your student and their experience of going through what is already a very stressful time, and how to try to counteract that in any way possible, that you can just counteract any sort of overwhelming stress that they might be experiencing. And so we have plenty of stories of students in the past where every time they got into a college or university, whether it was the likeliest of likely schools or the reachiest of reachy schools, their mom made cupcakes in the color of the school that they got into. Or at a certain point, I had a student, this was a little bit excessive. I had a student whose parents bought them a sweatshirt for every school that they were admitted to, because that way they had the school that they ended up going to, but they also just had every other reinforcement of every other place that also said, yes, this is great. And so just making sure that we have that sense of empowerment and positivity, it is a contagious thing. And students watch parents. This is a parent webinar, right? This is not a student webinar. So I feel like I can just say it. Like, kids watch well, I can say with a 7-year-old, he says some words that I didn't even know I said sometimes when I'm walking down the street. The way that kids observe their parents, you're aware of this, I know, I'm sure. And what you convey with what you say or don't say, and the attitude that you approach this college ecosystem is really, really important. And so just trying to keep that in mind. And it's something that probably as parents for 16 or 17 years you've been doing this whole time, but just trying to reinforce that component. And then we can get to some more practical pieces. Excuse me. So then now here's the parent role. So Caitlin gave you the very specific, like, pre-college application, like, marching orders, and here's what you can do to actually provide tangible help. Let's talk about once you have a senior who's already applied, now what? So then we can dive into that. So number one, the FAFSA, if you haven't been exposed to it, it makes it sound like a contagion, but it is this year. The FAFSA, it stands for Free Application of Federal Student Aid. It's basically any sort of financial aid that you might be applying for. It is based on the parents' income, tax returns, all of that. There is a little bit that has to do with the student, but for the most part, very few students make enough that it has any sort of impact. So this is the parents' job. So students applying to college, great, go forth, do that. Let them do that. Your job is to apply for financial aid if that's something that your family is planning to do. It's not that hard. It's something that everybody puts off way longer than they need to. I can tell you, when I was applying to grad school, I did it myself, and I was a 26-year-old who hadn't taken math in like a decade. And it was fine. So, like, you can do the FAFSA, but that is something that parents have to do. So that is a very tangible thing that you can do to help. It's also something that you can do if you have a junior and you're just curious what it's called the EFC, the estimated family contribution. You can just do it and find out. If, like, a lot of people say, well, we don't know if we'll qualify for need-based financial aid. So fill out the FAFSA, just see, like, just find out. And then that'll tell you what your EFC is. Each college will do something with that, and then they'll give you your financial aid package. But it's something that sometimes I assign to parents to keep them busy because they're kind of preoccupied with other things. And I'm like, well, if you're not sure about financial aid, just fill out the FAFSA. That'll take you an hour, and then, maybe you'll be bored at the end of that. Another thing is we use the term, actually, we didn't coin the term redirections. I believe it was Rick Clark at Georgia Tech used the term redirections for colleges and universities where you are not admitted. And so thinking about or thinking about that through the lens of redirection and not rejection. You'll find that not a single college-wise counselor uses the word rejection. It's toxic and it doesn't, I mean, what does that say to you? Like, it just means that this is not the course, this is not the direction that you will end up going. That's okay. You did your best, you made your decision. So let's talk through what are some of those redirective moments that we have as students. You know, college admission feels like the end all and be all, I think, a lot of the time, but it's not the first time most students have encountered this. If you tried out for a sports team and you didn't make the team, that's a redirection. If you tried out for a role in the drama club and you got a different role, that's a redirection. Like they're opportunities. They're not barriers. They're opportunities to pivot and try to figure out, well, what are the directions that are available to me? And so we do want to make sure that as counselors, that's something that we do all the time. But as parents, it's something that you can help reinforce too, of thinking about this not as a judgment, but as a just redirection, as an opportunity. Another thing that comes up, um, I'm somewhat grateful now that it's more common, is thinking about plan B. You can do this both before and after. Um, college and like Caitlin and I are college counselors, so it's kind of doesn't seem quite to be supporting our brand to say like there's lots of other options out there besides attending a four-year college and university, but there are a lot of different opportunities for students, and there are a lot of really tangible ways to pursue a four-year degree that don't necessarily start at UCLA. There's the automatic transfer pathway. There's universities like Northeastern that has or sorry, BU that has an automatic transfer, where you do the first year somewhere else and then you get a guaranteed transfer. Um, and community colleges are amazing. They're probably one of the best resources that our American higher education system has ever come up with, because they really do allow students to really hone in on their interests and passions and go forth and transfer that into a four-year university when they're ready. So thinking about plan B, like that's not a bad thing when we say and there's also the idea of gap years, and a lot of students will, it's more and more popular within the United States. It used to be well, it still is really popular in Europe, and Australia, but the gap year where you don't necessarily apply directly out of high school. You wait until you finish high school, take a year to work or try a few different fields, or in some cases, you can't really do this all that often, but in some cases, take some classes and just try it out and see, just because I'm good at math and I like Legos, does that mean I really do want to be an engineer, or is that, too much? And have that opportunity during a gap year is a perfectly valid thing to do. And when I worked on the admission side, well, I can say when I was a college student, my roommate freshman year had done a gap year, and I didn't even know that that was a thing you could do. But he was far more mature than I was. He was only a year older, but he was far more mature than I was. He had lived in Denmark for 4 months and on his own, and he was from Alaska, so they do a lot of weird stuff when they do their gap years. But he had lived on actually he worked on a fishing boat in Denmark instead of in Alaska. But he had subsisted, he earned a lot of money, and that was, I learned a lot from him of just sort of how to navigate my way in the world. And he had just done that gap year, and that was really empowering for him before he started college. It was one person's example, but I just want to point it out. It's something to think about. And then the last thing, and this is just the one that I want to continue to reinforce, and we've been reinforcing it a lot, is that this is a transitional period for everyone. As a parent, it is a transitional period because this tiny human who has only lived in your under your roof is now potentially going out into the big bad world, and you of course want to make sure that they are happy, healthy, protected, all of that. As the no longer tiny human, they are also justifiably probably scared at what that's going to look like, because there is no roadmap exactly, and but letting them own their decisions, letting them make their own decisions is obviously clear. Like, this is a student's decision, although like I did say earlier, frequently it's a family decision. But the important part of that is that you talk through it so that the student feels like they are owner of this decision, and that will always help them to maximize the next step. If they feel as though they are in charge, it will always be it will always maximize that next step. Which I think we can move on from there. I think we're going to kick it over to Nama.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. That was phenomenal. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Tom and Caitlin both had some wonderful one-liners. I wish I was writing them down. I hope you guys did. And if not, we definitely have the recording coming up as well. My name is Nama. I am the Senior Director of Sales and Marketing here at College Wise. And we're going to jump to Q&A. So thank you for all of you who've put together all those questions in the question and answer box. Please continue to do that, and we'll get to as many of them as possible. Before we jump into there, I know a lot of you all on the call are juniors. We have a few sophomores and freshmen as well, parents of those students. And it's a really stressful time. It's a stressful time for everybody, whether you're looking to apply now over the summer or you're wondering what's going to happen with the SAT requirements or ACT requirements over the next few years, or what the recent Supreme Court case means for admissions. There are going to be a lot of changes, not to mention everything happening with AI. So I know sometimes you hear a lot of things from your neighbors and a lot of, whispers, is this right? Is this right? Or you try to Google something, you come up with 10,000 different answers. And that's really where College Wise comes in. So we've been around for over 25 years now, and we've helped over 30,000 students, which feels like a crazy number, but it's real. And we were voted the #1 most trusted or best college consulting company in the country on Trustpilot last year. And that's just based off of what families are saying about us. And Caitlin and Tom today took time out of their day, but they're two of our lovely counselors, of which we have over 70 here at College Wise. And we really focus on finding the best fit counselor for each student so that the students and the counselors can work together to find that best fit school. There are so many schools out there, and we really just want to make sure that you guys are getting the most up-to-date information so that you're not stressing left and right over things that can actually be relatively simple, and that you're using your time the most efficiently. All of this is a marathon, not a sprint, right? So even if you are a junior, you have a lot left to do. If you're an 8th grader, there's a lot you can do between now and then to make sure that by the time you get to junior year, you're not super stressed. So we want to view this as like an expanded timeline and support every step of the way. One way that we do that, Tom, you can just skip to the next page. That's okay. I did all this. There you go. Thank you so much. Rapid fire through this because we have so many questions to get to. But I am going to launch a poll that asks if you are interested in working with us to please let us know. We have amazing family outreach specialists who are really excited to get to speak to each of you more. It's a 15-minute completely complimentary consultation. They'll get to know you. They just want to know more about you. Each question you'll see today when we get to the Q&A, people will say, it depends. A lot of the answers will be, it depends on what your specific situation is. And we want to turn as many of those it depends into, yes, we have the specific answer for you. So this is completely not committal. You just have to press yes, and then you'll be first in line for our family outreach specialists to reach out to you. Their schedules get really busy, so I want to make sure that we have enough space for you, especially now that we're getting a lot of those 2024 decisions coming out. We have quite a few people who are calling us saying, oh my gosh, I got deferred or I didn't get in. Like, how do I appeal? I was speaking to someone today who had like 3 or 4 clients asking that. So we want to make sure that that's not your case and that we get ahead of that. So go ahead and press yes. I'll leave this up as I do the Q&A, but I'm really excited to hopefully see some of your names as part of the College Wise family going forward. Okay, that was very rapid fire. I hope you all stayed with me. Now we're going to rapid fire some questions because we have 1,012 minutes. So please, Tom and Caitlin, keep it together. I'm just going to throw them at you. Mary Beth wants to know, I never feel like you can learn as much from a formal campus tour. How do we get a real sense of the place, the culture? I'll kick it to Caitlin.
Good, because I love this question. I mentioned in my introduction that I worked in college admissions for over a decade and did everything you could possibly do in college admissions, including run my alma mater's campus visit program. So I will say that doing the official admissions visit has a place and a purpose, and I really encourage families to go through that process. However, there are so many other things that you can do, and the organic time that you can spend on a campus and in the surrounding area can help you get to that true like feel and vibe. It is one of the times when I encourage, if the student has it within them and it fits their personality, to branch away from the parent or whoever is on that visit with them, go in different directions, and just strike up that conversation with a student at the coffee shop, or go pick up a sweatshirt in the bookstore and browse what books are on the shelf, because that tells you what are these students actually reading in classes. Go off campus, ask your tour guide, ask an admissions officer, ask a random person on the sidewalk what their favorite lunch spot is off campus, and go to that place. The inorganic between the scenes times and experiences, I think, can really get that vibe that our students so desperately want to connect with, and can help you also see the institution beyond the admissions facade.
So I think that was really helpful. Okay, someone wants to know, could virtual campus visits be enough? For example, you can see a lot on Google Maps, and those 3D tours seem to have a lot of information.
That is all true if you just care about the architecture. I think, you know, the worst. So like Caitlin, I've probably been on maybe 60 or 70 campus tours, and the worst ones are the ones that are just like, here's the building that houses physics. Physics is here. If you want to do physics, you go to this. But like, it's just all it is like, here's what it looks like. That's fine. Some virtual tours are, this is true. I mean, this is true when you visit a campus too, which is that like your tour guide is going to be giving you one person's experience. They will not be giving you everyone's experience. They will be giving you their experience. That's what they're there to do. They're not there to bribe you or like or sell you on like, here's where you have to go because we're an amazing school and I get 10% of your tuition or anything. Like they are there to kind of just present an authentic experience. And many of the online campus tours do a great job of that. And like if they have a student actually doing it. I think to Caitlin's point about actually visiting and the kind of the pieces that you can't get without by doing some sort of a whether it's a virtual campus tour or, I mean, you know, my favorite thing to do, I no longer visit colleges and take tours. I visit colleges and I sit and I watch and I see if people hold the door for each other. And that's maybe like an antiquated old school way to think about it, but it's just like, I feel like that's something that you do if you're part of a community, is you hold the door for somebody else. And I'll just sit there and I'm not like voyeuristic. I don't have like binoculars of like this person is holding the door for that, but you know, but I do think that that's a valuable component of just like, what is the day-to-day life look like? Like everybody's busy, everybody's on their way somewhere or on their way from somewhere. And being able to just watch, not just do people hold the doors for each other, that's a very tangible thing though that I do keep an eye out for, but just are people interacting with one another? Are there faculty and staff members who are also out on the quad and there to talk to, not that they need to have office hours like Lucy from Peanuts, but like that they're just going, they're interacting, they're part of this entire system that they are living and working in. Those are the things that I look for, and you can't get that from a virtual tour. So that's not to say that you need to visit every single college campus before you apply. I always tell students an application fee is always going to be less than a plane ticket. But I would visit before going, just like enrolling just about anywhere.
Yeah, I think that's excellent feedback. I had a friend who visited Stanford and hated her tour guide, and so she decided not to apply there. The way that you feel when you're on campus makes a big difference. But I think Tom's last point about the fact that, it's more expensive to buy a plane ticket than it is to actually apply to the schools. You can always visit after you get in, right? That's always an option as well. So lots of options here. All right, let's keep going because we keep getting more questions as you guys so lovely to answer them. Sue wants to know, how do you show a college the impact a student has had in their community, or just in small person by person cases without having leadership? It seems that all colleges want leadership. It's like the biggest buzzword right now, leadership and impact. Caitlin, I'll throw to you.
I love the book Quiet by Susan Cain. It is about the power of introverts and this embracing this idea of different styles of leadership. So check it out, or anyone with a student or child that identifies as an introvert, highly recommend. And I will say that like your student will be seen for who they are and how they contribute within their spaces, as long as they are articulating that within the spaces allowed to them within their application. One of the things that we work on so much with our students through the actual application process is articulating their story, making sure that they are not being too modest, but also not being too braggadocious, making sure that they are highlighting those spaces where they have contributed and will potentially have the opportunities to contribute in their own college community as well. Ultimately, the application that a student presents is what they are going to have their admissions decision rendered off of, right? They don't always get the opportunity to sit in front of a human and meet person to person. And that can be really scary. It is absolutely one of the points of anxiety for students to think that they are, well, this isn't what admissions decisions are, but being judged based off of some pieces of paper and a compilation of stories that they're telling. But there are absolutely ways for students to share who they are and do it effectively, and to utilize every space that they have control over to be themselves and be authentic. That's ultimately the best thing that they can do, whether it fits into the classic ideas or stereotypes of leadership, or your student just learns how to describe themselves and their experiences with leadership.
Awesome. Thank you so much for such a thoughtful answer. I think it's what Tom said as well. It's not about one student having everything, but it's about building that class. There was an amazing, I don't remember, it might have been Meredith, who likened the admissions process to building a cake. Like if you only have flour, the cake's going to taste terrible. So you need like someone who supplies the eggs and someone who supplies the sugar. And so it's really building that expansive classroom where when everyone is sitting at the dinner table, the conversations are really interesting. And that doesn't disclude introverts, right? There's another question here about introverts, but I think you covered that very beautifully. There are a few questions about college-wise here that I'm going to quickly rapid fire through, and then we'll throw it back to you all for a final few. How many sessions do students have with college-wise counselors? It depends on the package that you choose to go with, and we go based off of the number of schools that you work with and not necessarily hourly counseling, although we do have that available as well. Jamie, we do work with students with learning disabilities. We have some incredible counselors, and we actually had a webinar about learning disabilities, I believe last month, that was just phenomenal to watch. I've been in this industry for 7 years and I learned so many new things at that webinar. So we have some real experts in that field. We also work with homeschooled students, and the cost does range and the services range as well. We go all the way from like a few hours with the counselor to like really, really holistic support where you're getting everything from advice on course selection to testing to obviously going through which colleges to apply to, which major, which round, like all the essay support you could ever want. So we really run the gamut to make sure we can support as many families as possible. I know a lot of you have responded to the poll. I'm also going to drop a link in here. If you're sitting on this webinar and you're like, oh my God, I just need to speak to somebody right away. I don't want to wait for you to call me. I'm going to drop this here and you all can schedule for yourself if that's something that you're interested in. And our program advisors will be very happy to meet with you that way as well. Okay, back to non-college wise questions. This is a great question from Jack. How do you help your kid decide on their major or career? My son is only 16 and of course has no idea. How can they be expected to make such a huge decision at this age? Tom, over to you.
Well, honestly, they can't. Like, that's not usually a spot where, anytime I meet with a student who says they want to do computer science, engineering, or business, I'm just assuming that they don't know what they want to do, because nobody actually knows what it's like to study those things when you're 16 years old, and to do that full time. And it's okay to not be fully decided, but it's also just like convenient to say I want to do computer science because nobody's ever going to say, well, what do you do with a computer science degree? Like that's not like English in that regard, which I was an English major, and here we are. So I think it's not realistic to expect students to have that, and colleges also don't expect students to have that. The way I like to think of it is that, or the way I put it for students who are feeling like they really need to pick something and then tailor their lives to that, is that when you're applying to college, it doesn't matter what college, except for Cal Poly. It doesn't really matter what college you're applying to. You can be undecided, you just can't be uninterested. You have to have interests. You don't have to be zeroed in on one thing. If you can be passionate about something, then you can be passionate about anything. It's really just a trying to reframe it away from you have to pick now to you just have to find what you like, or the things that do drive your interests, and pursue those. And somebody else was asking, not necessarily about academics, but about like extracurriculars and how do you make an impact. And it's like, you make an impact when you care. And so if you care about something, whether it's an academic subject or an extracurricular activity, you're going to put forth the extra effort to show what you're capable of in that category. And so yeah, it is a journey to find that for some students, and that's okay. That's the journey that we're all on, together as counselors and as people and as students. And so you're not going to be penalized for being unsure when you're applying to college, as long as you're applying to the right colleges.
Yep, that pretty much sums it up. I'd say, things have changed now that most people don't stay in the same jobs, let alone the same industry for their entire career. And so I think what colleges are really preparing students for, and what college-wise really prepares students for, is how to have that grit, how to persevere, how to learn how to change with the flow and with what's going on, and not feel stuck in any one discipline or any one major, and be able to apply the skills that you're learning in high school and beyond to whatever the student decides to do college is just the tip of the iceberg. And so there's so much after that as well. I think if you guys take anything away from today, it's, don't be uninteresting, I think is what Tom said. But yes, that is excellent. You guys stick around for one more question? I know we're a little bit over time here. Is everyone happy with one more quick one? Great. Okay. We'll do this one because I know it's a popular one. Thoughts on juniors taking or not taking the SATs? Caitlin.
Got it. And I'm glad my video came back. I don't know what happened. I disappeared for a second. Testing is a tool, and it should be in a student's tool belt in the college admissions process for as long as it serves them. So through my counseling with students, I have a lot of those self-reflective conversations and questions for my students about testing. We go through one of the benefits of CollegeWise and our amazing testing and tutoring branch. There are free diagnostic exams, low cost, low stakes, for students to, without the anxiety of taking an official SAT or ACT, try them out. And then also reap the benefits of experts in the field, helping them see where their strengths are, where improvements could be made, and what kind of investment, time, energy, resources they may need to make in order to see improvements. Knowledge is power, and we fully lean into that with testing strategy so that a student feels empowered, a family feels empowered to make a decision about testing moving forward.
Thank you guys all so much. I know it's getting late on the East Coast. Those of you on the West Coast, I hope you enjoy a nice dinner after this. To all of you who stayed on the whole time, we really appreciate it. And to Tom and Caitlin, thank you so much again for taking time out of your busy junior heavy build days to host and share with all the families online. We really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
You.